It wouldn't be the first time, but I am authentically late. It took me a little bit longer than I expected to get things set up. What's up? This is not the screen that you guys usually see. I was working on this as the countdown was going. This is going to be the thumbnail for my new stream segment that I'm going to upload to YouTube. Yeah, I'm pretty proud of it. Simple, but pretty well, I think it's going to be pretty good at appealing to the YouTube algorithm. Anyways, let's just that. So you're getting a window into how I edit my videos. You see, I have a folder. So this is a little bit off topic. I am going to start up Melee soon, but I want to save this so that my work doesn't get lost. When I'm editing video, I have a folder in the videos folder called video editing, and then in that folder, I have a folder for each segment that I am making, or that I have worked on. You can see here. And I actually don't delete them because they have valuable resources in them that I can use for later videos. So, let's just title this one thumbnail. And there we go. Now it is saved. Now I can exit out of this. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to do a debate review today. There was a debate recently between LonerBox and Destiny on Israel-Palestine. This would not be the first time that Destiny has appeared on stream. On my stream, in the form of a debater in a debate that I was reviewing. In fact, that was the last debate review I did. It was him versus Cenk. But this time, it's him and LonerBox. And I think this time... Oh, oops. No, what the get that out of here. I think this time I will end up agreeing with Destiny probably a bit less. That makes sense. What the where? Okay. Here's that window. Where is the... Okay, window capture, right? Is that what I am going for here? Let me open this up. I know there's like a very easy way to do like the picture-in-picture thing, but I think I would rather just have it in a main window here. This is from LonerBox's channel, LonerBox Live. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Is that not, something about this is not quite right. Oh, I see. Okay, okay. I understand now. It is... No, wait, it is on top of this stuff. I don't get it. I'm gonna be real. Let's try this again. Properties. No. Let me remove this. Sorry, I'm dealing with some technical difficulties here. Add. Window capture. React Andy, maybe? Properties. Yeah, there we go. Okay, okay. So you guys can see this now. I just have to... oh. Hold on. Not do that quite yet. I want to do the alt-click thing, right? That... Yes. Okay. So that brings it down to this level. I do this, right? There we go. So now the title of the video and the video itself are visible. The rest of the page is not. This doesn't really apply. It's just like a window into the window. If I scroll, it will also scroll. Let's have you down in the corner there. Hopefully that's small enough. Let's put it just above. Let's bring you actually down a little bit. Let's bring you right above the capture card. Okay. Hopefully that isn't taking up too much of the screen there. We'll find out in game whether this poses a problem or not. It should be okay. You know what? I'm gonna just trust that that is okay as is right now. And I'm gonna go back to this this thing. Actually, on that note, I will have to do something like this. There we go. That's not ideal. You know what? I'll just rely on the OBS window to have Twitch chat open, and I will get started.
What do you think's the right move?
Honestly, I'm pro-genocide. Like, it sounds really shitty, but like, I think that Israel should just draw up its fucking borders about where it is now, and basically, Palestinians can go live in another place. That's really shitty, but like, that's about where I'm at. I don't know.
Okay, that's pretty bad.
Do you think that Palestine should just pack up and Native American the fuck out of there?
The problem is that it seems like there is a hugely general hostility.
Okay, here's the I know that Destiny is Mr. Out of Context Master. I don't think there's any way to defend that thing that he said there. I'm gonna... Let's see. How is the desktop audio doing versus how is my microphone?
To Jewish people across really the entire world, definitely the Middle East. So the problem is that as you weaken Israel's like ability for Jewish people to live there, it seems like there is because there's a lot of different organizations across the Middle East that are highly invested in the destruction of Israel. So that's like a really rough thing too. So it seems like if Israel is forced to make concessions to Palestinians, it threatens Jewish people's ability to have a homeland. And so I don't know. It's really shit. Truthfully, the answer is like there's no good answer. It's hard.
Okay, so there we get to the actual answer. I know that I think Destiny, being a liberal, is more pro-Israel than he is pro-Palestine, but I do think it's generally correct, kind of, that like this is a geopolitical can of worms that there's not a good way out of right now, especially considering how invested the United States is in maintaining Israel's security interests in the Middle East, because their security interests are basically our security interests as a geopolitical entity. But at the same time, I think that the main... There's like two big reasons why the Middle East hates Israel. One is because they're Jewish, and that's inexcusable. But then two is because they are bulldozing Palestinians out of their land. They are, I mean, Destiny kind of acknowledges they are doing to the Palestinians basically what we did to the Native Americans. Evicting them from their homes, putting them in like re-education camps if they aren't outright just being like forcibly moved elsewhere. And of course, relegating them to the status of second-class citizens, not just in effect, but literally in name. Palestinians, on paper, have less rights than Jewish Israelis. It's an ethno-state, and it's not good.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a really complicated situation. It seems like appeasing either end basically means like kind of the destruction of the other end. If you give Jewish people what they want, Palestinians are essentially permanently cocked out of what they...
Unironically, though, I would be okay with the destruction of the state of Israel insofar as it means that, like, you don't have the Israeli government anymore. So, like, I understand that at this point, right, Israel has existed long enough that that like people have been living there their whole lives, and I don't think it is fair to those people if we say that they have to leave, because now we're just reversing the dynamic and doing the same shitty thing, but to you know, the other side, which of course is the criticism that I would bring of Israel, referring back to like the Holocaust where Jews were genocided en masse, and then now the Jewish like ethno-state of Israel is doing that to Palestinian Arabs. I think anybody who has lived there their whole life should be allowed to continue to live there, but I think there needs to be some form of right of return for Palestinians who have been evicted in their lifetime, or something like that. You know, and I think even though a lot of this isn't super feasible right now, I would be in favor of a one-state solution. What did I just drop into? Hey, 1v3, what's up? I'm doing a debate review. This is LonerBox, British or Scottish political YouTuber, is a socialist, versus Destiny, an American political YouTuber, a liberal, on the issue of Israel-Palestine. And the intro is Destiny, I think, on another debate panel talking about it. I realize I've taken up a lot of airtime where like the debate hasn't even officially begun yet, but I wanted to sort of establish my take on the Israel-Palestine situation, so that I can say that it seems like, although Destiny's being an edgelord here, he is trying to have a reasoned take, and I will probably agree with him on some things and disagree with him on other things, because he is, to a degree, politically literate. You know, I give him that much credit at the very least.
They feel is their rightful homeland, and if you give Palestinians what they want, then probably a lot of Jewish people are going to die right now.
But yeah, as he highlights there, it's obviously a very difficult situation.
Here, I'm dragging in Rob too. You guys can both do this, okay? We can all do this at the same time. I'm just curious.
Rob?
I have no
Who's
strong
Rob?
position here, so maybe he has strong thoughts on this too. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah, hit me up. Wait, Rob, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Oh, Rob Noer. I remember back in the in the days of the like hippy dippy debate panel, or whatever. Rob Noer is a American right wing YouTuber who is he's something. I don't know how crazy he is exactly, but you know, he's had some pretty nutty takes. Yeah. Let's get going here. By the way, at 1v3, I did see in the Discord that you wanted to ask me a question. You can, you know, feel free to do that at any time. There's no rush. This video is an hour long. I'm not going to get through it all on stream, regardless of how fast or slow I go. And so I would rather just take it at my own pace. I'll probably split this into 2 streams.
Feelings about...
Welcome back, by the way. It's been a while.
I think a few days ago I said that I feel like the only solution to Israel-Palestine is Israel basically just slowly solidifying the hold on the territory they have, Palestinians basically just kind of being ass mad that they're slowly getting kicked out, and that more or less the borders that exist now, with maybe some exceptions to some parts of the West Bank that Israel doesn't care about, maybe slowly goes back to the Palestinians, but things like the Golan Heights and everything are never changing hands, and nobody around the world is going to enforce it, and we're just moving in that direction. Yeah, that's kind of my position. And then LonerBox had an issue with that, so...
I think this is an unnecessarily doom and gloom political take from Destiny, and I think he's being overly conciliatory to what the Israeli government wants here. A lot of the Israeli territory is outside of the scope of what official legal documents say they are allowed to have. If I go to... Let me open the other Opera window that I had here. If I go Israel-Palestine borders over time? No, let's go to images. Yeah, here we go. Here's a good one. Let's go look at this. What is this from? PalestinePortal.org. This is a pro-Palestinian org, but this is an accurate representation of the sort of land that we're talking about here. This is the initial UN plan from 1947. This is the initial state of Israel as it was established, obligatory border comment. This was never going to end well, but some version of either that or the 1967 borders are what legal documentation in various parts of like the UN and certain Western treaties and whatever acknowledge that this is Palestinian land, this stuff, and then this is Israeli land, and that's it. But as you can see here, 2005, this is actually the situation's even worse now. You can see here, Palestine has basically been reduced to a bunch of disparate neighborhoods in the east and the Gaza Strip, which is the most densely populated strip of land on Earth. I think 5 million people live in the Gaza Strip alone. But Israel has shown a very clear disregard for international law and has been bulldozing through, sometimes literally destroying Palestinian homes, forcing Palestinian people out of their homes, and allowing Jewish settlers in by virtue of their ethnicity. This is not supposed to be an anti-Jewish thing in any way, but it is very clear that like a lot of the settlement here is strictly colonial in nature. Everybody I think knows the infamous video of a guy who was from New York and moved to Israel because he had the right in Israeli law to do so because he was Jewish, and just straight up walked onto a Palestinian family's land and kicked them out of their own home that they'd been living in for decades. And he lives there now. So that, that story extrapolated on a wide scale is what's happening here. I don't think that we should throw up our hands and say, well, there's nothing the international community can do. The international community created Israel. It could just as easily rein it in. And to a certain extent, I would say destroy it. That sounds very violent to say, but I think that, this kind of situation is not tenable for the people on the ground there. And funnily enough, the Israeli people are actually starting to look at it this way as well. When when you're on the ground and you have a sense of human empathy, you start to empathize with people that are being kicked out of their homes and removed off of their land. So that's where I'm at, and I don't think Destiny is being appropriately. I don't think he's appropriately considering that Palestinians need a home too. And a lot of Israelis already had a home, and they simply moved to Israel to make other people vacate theirs. And of course, the whole situation is mired with anti-Semitism too. The entire reason that Israel was created to begin with is because no country wanted to actually commit to being a safe haven for Jewish people. Anyways. Sorry. Many diatribes aside,
So
debate time.
When I heard you say that, because I rewatched the VOD before I joined in, and it did sound like you were kind of saying that you were asked what should happen. And I think you described it yourself as like having like a radicalized position. It felt like when I was speaking to you about it in the moment that you kind of moved on to this just seems like the most likely thing. So
I think I was giving that as a counter to you saying it was a ridiculous position, but I do think that's probably what should happen. I haven't heard a good argument for what should happen in contrast to that, short of like everybody in the middle.
So, and then here's where his position goes from like reasonable but disagreeable to I think like this is kind of insane. I'm gonna be I'm gonna keep it real. Because it's one thing to say, like, the situation on the ground is clearly very grim, and it doesn't seem like there are a whole lot of good solutions, and this is what I think will happen. This is what I think is most likely, and we need to prepare for this while also, like, fighting against it to try to make something better happen. But it's another thing entirely to now, as Destiny say, this is what I think is most likely to happen, and furthermore, I think it should happen.
Middle East fucking chills the fuck out. Like, if there wasn't such a threat to Jewish people in the Middle East, I think I would be like, okay, they need to probably give some of this land back, or all of it.
So if there's such a threat to Jewish people in the Middle East, why did the UN create Israel in the Middle East? We need Israel too. That's what we need. Regardless, I think he misses out on the fact that I'm sure he's going to talk about the Middle Eastern aggression towards Israel, which is all but gone now because Israel has the Iron Dome. There is basically nothing that the Middle East could do, nor could they ever do, to pose a legitimate threat to the existence of the state of Israel. Israel is an ally of the United States. The United States has nukes. Nobody will mess with the United States. Nobody would dare to mess with the United States. because of the kind of power that we hold on the international stage and our willingness to use that power in favor of Israel. And furthermore, Israel could just block any missile attack that is incoming. Not with perfect efficacy, but, And need I mention also the 6 Days War, actually the 2 wars that Israel fought in the 1940s and then again in the 1960s, where they invaded their neighbors. I forget if they did that once or twice, but there were 2 wars where Israel basically uncontested won the entire war and exacted massive territorial gains from their neighbors, which the United States actually had to then come in and say, no, you can't just annex land from your neighbors. Even we don't think that's gonna fly. And then Israel had to give that land back. When I think about Israel and Palestine, it looks from my perspective like if Israel sees Palestine like a too big virus, they thought they could defeat it quickly, but just can't do it quickly yet, and Israel feels like a real underdog. With the nuclear bombs and the army they have in comparison to their size and neighbors. I see what you're saying, but what you described, the Israel's nuclear presence and whatnot, is exactly why that I think Destiny's argument is insane here. Nobody in the Middle East could pose a significant threat to Israel while they have the Iron Dome and the allyship of the United States. But I might not be interpreting this entirely correctly. And of course, part of the problem is that they see Palestine like a virus. They see it like a disease rather than a nation or community of people that are living there, or a tribe or whatever.
Pull this line back and then kind of like work out some solutions. But yeah, go.
Yeah. Okay. So just to be clear, like the reason I called the position ridiculous, or I think the word was retarded, but I think the reason I said that was because it was the should statement, because I don't really know how you could advocate for this position of which basically necessitates either ethnically cleansing or genociding like millions of people.
Does ethnically genocide or does genocide or ethnic cleansing, is that necessitated if we're just talking about expulsion or?
Well, expulsion is ethnic.
Yes. This is okay. This is Destiny misunderstanding the definition of genocide. Forced expulsion of an entire group of people is genocide. When we talk about genocides like the Armenian genocide and the Native American genocide, some of the genocide was not necessarily carried out just in the form of killings. A lot of it was in the form of people being forced to leave their homes. That already counts as a genocide. Being forced across miles upon miles of territory to uproot families and communities and put them in unfamiliar situations, that does immense harm to people, both sociologically, psychologically, and emotionally and stuff. Which is why it's actually part of the UN definition of what constitutes a genocide. One of the criteria is the forced expulsion or removal of people from a certain area.
Or whatever.
It would be a part.
It might be. I'm just making sure. When I hear ethnic cleansing, I think of like killing fields, like murdering and everything. But you mean ethnic cleansing could just be like mass deportation of people, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
What do you mean by genocide?
Genocide's like when you deliberately kill them, like wipe them out, right?
Well, so you're saying it would lead to ethnic cleansing and genocide?
One or the other would be necessary.
Or the other. Okay. All right.
I guess Rob Noor is moderating this debate. I don't know if he's gonna actually be a participant.
I had a problem with us saying that this is what should happen, because I think saying that should happen, that Israel should just grab more and more of what they've already occupied, like in the West Bank. To me, I think it's a horrible position for the Palestinians to advocate for, but it's also actually, I think, even a little bit self-destructive to Israel, because it's a massive gamble, especially if you're like a pro-Israel person, because as soon as you start doing that, as soon as you start annexing, realistically, you're not deporting millions of people like anytime soon. And they're going to demand voting rights. And internationally, voting rights is a very difficult thing to argue against. And if they get the voting rights, then Israelis will quickly become either a minority or not big enough for like a big majority, that the whole Jewish state, like Zionist dream, dies with it. So that's the big difference. It's the should thing I have a problem with, rather than like.
What do you think? What do you think should?
Yeah, I think LonerBox makes actually an incredibly good point here. That like. When this is happening, right? A lot of the Palestinians, they can't just immediately leave to Jordan is one country they've left too. I think some of them have. Well, down south, most of them live in the Gaza Strip. I think it's mostly Jordan that Palestinian people have been like leaving to once they've been evicted from their homes. It's a whole deal where like a lot of the Palestinians, after being evicted from their homes and forced off their land, are going to remain in Palestine, or what used to be Palestine, within the Israeli like zones of control and whatever. They're going to just be under Israeli occupation more directly. And this is where you get a lot of people in what have been described as open-air prisons, which tread dangerously close to concentration camp territory. It certainly isn't yet to the degree of like the British Empire, where they had them doing forced labor in there. But on its own, that's like really not good. And the fact that there's like this massive border wall as well that's staffed by Israeli military that's pointing a gun at them at all times is also really not good. They basically, the more the genocide progresses, the more evident it is that it's going to just become a genocide on the part of the Israeli government. And of course, I think eventually this is going to come to a head one way or another. Like LonerBox said, the whole like, well, making some concessions to enable Palestinian people to have rights within Israel, that's eventually going to crescendo in the form of like a civil rights or voting rights debate, which is going to be a very touchy subject internationally. And maybe then you get some action out of the international community. I'm not entirely sure, but one thing's for sure is that even if we don't know 100% what could be done right now, there are certain stopgaps that can be taken. Like the end goal is one thing. The intermediate policy objectives aren't clear, but there are some immediate things that we can do. Like Israel, stop invading Palestine and taking people's homes. Just stop. You don't need to do that. Yeah. Sorry, I went on for way too long again. I'm going to try to
happen. What is like your outlining like 3 scenarios above this, or just
Scale
one,
back
I guess,
on
for
it.
what you think
I'll
should happen.
give you 2. So
Oh, here we go.
Is that we go with what is still kind of an international consensus that doesn't get enforced, which is stop the expansion of settlements, try and pull back on the ones that at least Israel considers
pre-watched.
illegal, like outposts.
How did I call it?
And
Wait.
then,
I want to bring up the map.
Stop it. Yeah, stop it. Get some help. Stop evicting Palestinian people. Very true.
Because I'm just geographically. Okay. When we talk about where all the settlements are these settlements that are typically like right outside Jerusalem, like to the east, or are these settlements that are more like to the north or south, like east of Tel Aviv, or where are like the settlements that people fight over all the time?
they're all scattered throughout the West Bank. It's like Area C. If you look up a map of areas A, B, and C in the West Bank, they're all in Area C. Pretty much.
You said
Area
most of them
C.
are in Area C?
That map is probably not going to show you Area C. Yeah.
I'm just...
Why did I do that?
Man, this is what am I looking at? Is this the Gaza Strip, this little white thing here?
I'll maybe find you on that kind of. But what the fuck is that one? Oh shit, let me find you on that.
How are we getting 3-dimensional cross-sectional analysis maps? I feel like I'm looking at a biology class slide.
Just Google Area C map and go to images, like the top fucking 10
Area
are
C
Area
map.
C.
Okay, damn, don't do this whole
I'm
Okay. Area C map. Okay, so is it the red thing? No, wait. I'm sorry, hold on.
Your stream's a bit
Area
delayed.
C is blue and light blue. East Jerusalem is in red.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
one, yeah.
Wait, so there are hold on. So there are Israeli settlements all the way out here,
I think
all over
most
the
of
West
them
Bank.
are in the western side.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, if you can look at if you look up Israel settlements map, yeah, they are, but they go all the way through as well and into the east. Yeah.
There's
Some of them are
settlements
actually
all
near
over the
Jordan
fucking
River.
place. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, they're kind of all over the shop. This is why
Gotcha. Okay, go ahead.
Israel keeping one position.
You remember that 2005 map? It's even worse now. Where, like, you saw the 1947 to 1967 to like to 2005. Like a lot of the green stuff, that's where Palestine used to be, like the first international borders and then the second international borders, whatever. A lot of the area that Israel settled, the Palestinians were gradually forced out. And like when I say forced, I really do mean forced. And so there's like dotted Israeli settlements like all over the place. It's a hot mess. And Israel's been doing some incredibly despicable things, like literally rerouting water from Palestinian villages to Israeli villages and settlements, and preventing grain shipments, inhibiting Palestinian people's movements. There are so many like border checkpoints because you saw the kind of border war we're dealing with. Palestinian people are effectively trapped. That's why I called it an open air prison, is because they can't go anywhere. They would have to go through Israel, and because Israel's an apartheid state, the rights of Palestinians are very restricted. In fact, Palestinian people aren't even allowed to drive on certain roads. They're stuck there.
That is like maybe the Israeli right-wing position, which is just that they take Area C, right? Because that's what Israel already controls, and they leave A and B to the Palestinians. That's what gives you the Trump peace plan. You can look at that map as well. It just looks like a kind of batshit like.
Wait, where is
leopard
I need to
map.
see.
That would be
I
all
need to
the
see
white
area.
places being Palestinian.
Okay, that sounds like a clusterfuck. All right.
Yeah.
How, like, also, can I just get my
At the very least, both of these guys agree that it is a massive clusterfuck.
for my mind on this, okay? How big is this whole area in comparison to like a state? Like if I go from the north of the West Bank all the way down to the south of the West Bank, what is like the West Bank, like what is the size here?
It's a
Because
bit smaller
I'm looking
than
at this on a
Lebanon.
map and it looks really big, but then I see down here, the scale here is kilometers. Is like all the way from the north to south, are we just talking like a few hundred kilometers?
It's a bit smaller than Lebanon, so yeah, it takes maybe not more than 2 hours to drive all the way.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I know exactly how big Lebanon is. I've driven across it so many times.
I'm referencing it for myself, just my thought process.
Okay.
Being
Can you do
cheeky.
this in like terms of like Florida's or Texas's for me?
Driving for 2 or 3 hours will get you across the whole place, I think.
Okay, we'll get
One
you
or
from
the other.
top to bottom
I
for
think
this.
so, yeah.
Okay,
Not
crazy.
more than 2
okay,
hours, I think, yeah.
gotcha. Okay, that's pretty wild. All right.
Lebanon, my man knows his food. True. And Destiny was making a joke. He's the whitest motherfucker I've ever seen. He talks shit. Okay, this is one thing that I will like it basically. I can't have any good faith for Destiny after this specific take. He talks shit about Lebanese food under the umbrella of like Mediterranean food. He's the whitest motherfucker I have ever seen, and I'm pretty white. This guy is so white. He makes me feel like I have the N-word pass. Like let's put it that way. He does not know his food. I've had Lebanese,
That's
so
also
it's very
why,
good.
like, a lot of the refugees, even from back in 48, like, there's a whole thing where you get these photographs where they're basically in a refugee camp and they can still see the ruins of their old villages from, like, across the field. Yeah, it's great. It's a small area.
Okay. All right. Hit me. Okay. So hit me up with your thing you were saying. So you
So-
said the Trump one of Jews keep Area C and the Palestinians are in this like leopard print is probably not.
Probably not.
Right.
No. So I'd say what's the more, I guess, like the American liberal or like center-left position would be that they pull back on, they stop expanding settlements for one. They pull back on the illegal ones, which are about maybe 100 of them.
So far, so good.
Then, illegal by Israeli standards. And then they kind of work out like a land swap thing, a settlement on Jerusalem, a settlement on refugees, and then they go with that, which is what like they've come fairly close to in the past. This is kind of what was the peace process of the 90s and 2000s. So that's one option, 2 states.
Yeah, I actually know what LonerBox is talking about here, and this is a good idea. It's workable from a policy perspective. The issue with like the peace proposals at the time, they did come very close to working, like he said. I saw there was a video by a Palestinian guy explaining the process because he grew up during this whole thing. He did some research into it, and at each stage of the process, it seemed like things were going well. And then for each of the agreements, I think in the 1990s, early 2000s, like mid 2000s, somebody in the Israeli government held up the process long enough for the deal to fall through. And then the peace talks and like negotiations basically went back to square one, right? Which makes me think that like there might be a rotating villain thing happening within the within Israel in the Israeli government and stuff like that. But at the same time, it does also show that like the what LonerBox here is referring to as like the center-left proposal clearly isn't useless. Like, it's working, or it could work if enough eyes are on Israel. I think actually if peace talks and negotiations on land settlements and land swapping like that resumed at some point in the future in the 2020s or whatever, if enough international eyes were on the process, and if the United States was maybe a little bit more abrasive to Israel than we usually are, then I think these have a very good chance of actually pulling through, right? But as it stands, you know, those conditions need to be met, and I think that, like, people like Destiny who are making the argument that, like, what's the point, and also they probably should just do it, you know, they probably should just push out all the Palestinians, those people are not helping.
Okay, wait. So repeat that. So Jews pull back from the illegal settlements, which are, you said most of them, or?
Not
it's like 100 out of...
Not Jews, Israelis. There's a significant difference here. This is a mistake that I find liberals and conservatives usually make. Israel actually, believe it or not, has an anti-Semitism problem of its own. Ethiopian Jews are massively discriminated against in Israel. And so are Arab Jews. They are just racist. So, you know, they're anti-Semitic against non-white Jews, basically, like non-Ashkenazim and stuff.
350, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
the outpost that Israel considers illegal. Yeah.
Okay. Where is the on this map? Where is the Golan Heights on this map? Yeah, in
North.
comparison to Jerusalem.
See where Jenin
direct-
is in the north? Yeah, it's just north of the West Bank.
I don't know what
Israel
map
has
they're
the
looking
Golan
at,
Heights.
but
Gotcha. Okay. So it's north of Jenin. There's the Golan Heights.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah, that's one. I think Israelis are still fairly split. I think there's maybe a bit less than half of them believe in stopping the settlements. I think half of the parties believe that. They're all fucked out of power right now. But as for Palestinians, they used to be mostly in support of that solution. They're a lot more skeptical of it now because of how much of a failure it was in the past. But yeah, that's one possible solution that I think is worth pushing for before the annexation thing. The other one is...
Oh, wait. My internet just blipped for a second.
I love leftist internet.
Calm yourself from-
Destiny's not a
You can still
leftist,
hear
he's
me,
a
right?
liberal, but
What else?
Funny
is there?
meme.
F's in the chat. Oh no.
Is my kick stream still up?
Don't know.
Oh, sometimes.
oh yeah, I forgot. Destiny streams on Kick or something.
Weird. Okay. All right. Go. Okay. Also, I'm so sorry. Okay, so repeat that last thing one more time. I was looking at the map, getting it, and I have it in mind. Okay, so repeat what you said, like the liberal thing was. Repeat that one thing.
Yeah, that's it. Like it's pull back on settlements, negotiate land swaps so Israel can keep the larger settlements in exchange for land elsewhere. Settlement on Jerusalem. Usually there's something like Palestinians get the Palestinian majority areas, Jews get the Jewish majority areas. There's some kind of like open city plan. Settlement on refugees, and then that's like the two-state solution that is mostly popular amongst like center-left. Was very popular for Palestinians.
Can you tell
not so
me,
much anymore.
when you say pull back on the most illegal settlements or whatever, would this give, so just totally like a fucking retard opinion, but like I feel like no plan works unless you have like a whole country that's like connected start to finish. What you just said, would that give you like a decent chunk of Palestinian land, or would it still be like split into like 3 different weird fucking bodies of area?
Most of the maps I've seen, it looks like Palestinians keep like 97% of the West Bank. Like that was a lot of the plans from.
Oh,
so
okay,
it's
okay,
quite
gotcha.
small. Like the very big settlements, there aren't that many of them, and they could just connect to Israel. Yeah. The connect.
I will. Okay, I want to take a second to acknowledge a valid critique that Destiny brings up of the plan here, which is that like depending on what land gets swapped, it's possible you still have a very fragmented Palestine and also a pretty fragmented Israel, which is never good for international relations purposes. I mean, just you think about like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, or whatever. There are certain countries in other parts of the world that have like not good border gore. That like frequently run into issues about that border gore. The degree to which they're blown up kind of depends on the surrounding circumstances, but I feel like in Israel-Palestine's case, it would be a significant point of friction. And I think a better idea, as grug-brained as this sounds, is to give Israel and Palestine, if we're talking about a two-state solution, contiguous territory. So if I go again to an Israel-Palestine borders map, let's go back to this one that I was looking at earlier, right? Let's see what's up. So right now Palestine, the two-state solution would call for like some version of this kind of land distribution or whatever. I would advocate that over time Palestine be given like land in the south here or something like that, or at least maybe they be given some connection to the ocean, right? Because right now this is landlocked, and I know airports exist, but I don't know. It's a difficult thing. And of course, I did also want to mention that sea borders need to be negotiated as well, because right now what's one of the biggest problems is it doesn't show on this map of borders, but Israel controls all of the water off the coast. This is all Israeli waters. Palestine, even though they have a seaport in the Gaza Strip, they're stuck. They can't do shipping. They have to get Israeli permission to run ships through here. But yeah, ultimately, I think that like there needs to be some concerted effort to make sure that the lands of Palestine and Israel aren't like super fragmented. If the two-state solution is going to work, you know. I would, hey, you know what? It might even be a better idea, since historically there have been a lot of Palestinian settlements in the north. It might be worth a try to give Palestine like some land up here to connect this to the ocean there, and then that way you kind of avoid the problem of a landlocked chunk of territory, right? I mean, I'm drawing lines in my head here that obviously aren't based off of a whole lot of research, but I think it would be a bad idea, at the very least, to leave this issue unaddressed. I think that would just lead us eventually back to the same problem we have now, where there are frequent border conflicts, and Israel like basically shoving Palestine around about like, hey, you're holding onto our land, even though like there's like enclaves within enclaves or whatever.
Because
when I look at this,
But apart from that, I don't think I agree with Destiny, because I have a feeling that he might be bringing up this critique just to refute LonerBox's proposal of like what the peace plan should be. And I think above all, even if that doesn't get addressed, which I think it should, that like the issue of the border war and fragmentation of the two countries, even if that doesn't get addressed, I think it is still worth it to pursue the two-state solution where we prioritize just stopping Israel from creating additional settlements and sort of
gotcha. When I look at this Area C map,
simmer down
saying that most of these blue and light blue
occupation
areas have Jewish settlers in them.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so that you'd be pulling back quite a bit. Is it, just curious, when we talk about Jewish settlers, are they mostly a certain type of Jew? Like, are these like Orthodox Jews, or are they just like hip young Jews, or like is there like a particular type of Jews, or
A lot of working class Jews, it's much cheaper to, not really work, but like it's cheaper to live in settlements. So people with families, but also the illegal settlements, like the ones that Israel considers legal, they are there because they are religious nutcases who think it's their fucking homeland. Like that's the only reason they're there. Yeah.
and so
they
most
set
people
fucking tents and like portable boxes and shit. Yeah.
Sorry to interject the flow of this, but I'm gonna back out until you're ready to talk, Destiny. I don't want to be rude. I don't really have anything to add to this, so.
Yeah, you're fine. I'll message
Oh, okay.
you. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Okay,
I guess Rob was just there to kind of hang out for a bit.
go ahead. Okay.
Okay. Man to man. Oh, where were we?
You were saying that you think that nuclear genocide is not the way to go, and I was arguing for chemical weapons. Okay, gotcha.
Very
So-
true. Many such cases.
So that's the hip thing, is pulling some Jews back from the most illegal settlements, whatever that means, and then kind of negotiating out to where like
Meant to
Palestine
up either.
some 97% of the West Bank. Okay, go ahead.
And the other one, which I think is what I think I would advocate for if the scenario you're explaining actually happens, if Israel starts annexing more of the West Bank, which the current government definitely wants to do, it's like their top priority. If that happens, then I think you would have to support Palestinians who just want to make it one state with voting rights. And that's maybe where we would be at an impasse, or where we would have a disagreement.
The one-state solution, you mean?
Yeah, if Israel just keeps on annexing so that there's no possibility for a two-state solution, then Palestinians will switch their advocacy for just the whole thing is one state. And
Yeah, okay, I see what he's getting at here. So it's kind of what they mentioned earlier, but I think I have a better picture of it now. So if all the negotiations fall through, like things don't really get rolling quick enough, Israel is just going to annex all of Palestine, right? West Bank, Gaza Strip, all of it, because that's what mainstream politics in Israel, funnily enough, revolves around. Outside of like Netanyahu and Ben Gvir being like authoritarian weirdos, and that sort of stuff that kicked up recently, every major party in Israel either has to tolerate or is fully in support of the like ethnic cleansing and annexation of Palestinian territory. But like I mentioned, with forced migration and like forcibly removing people from their land, it's almost impossible to do that all at once. So there's going to be a very significant number of Palestinians still left in Palestine. And what happens then, if you have a fully annexed Palestine under Israeli occupation with Palestinians still living in it, is either you have to make them citizens of that country, whereby you potentially get the good ending of a one-state solution, maybe, but more likely it would be the case that it becomes a full-blown gruesome genocide, worse than the ethnic cleansing that we're seeing right now. It wouldn't be an easy, petite, calm party. Yeah, no, it really would not. And I think, regardless of what does happen, it's very clear that the current Israeli government wants the outcome to be they annex all of Palestine, and then they do whatever they end up doing to Palestinians, which I could assure you would not be giving them voting rights and representation.
Yeah, one state. I don't think anybody genuinely wants a. Well, Palestinians might, but I don't think Israel wants a one-state solution, right?
Oh no, Israel
they
definitely
do, but
doesn't.
they want one where Palestinians can't vote. That's like the far right.
Yeah,
Israel,
that's okay. So that's the apartheid solution, right?
Yeah.
Huh. So, is there value? So outside of the Golan Heights, and I think that Sinai shit was given back to Egypt, right? Is there any value in the West Bank? Like,
Oh, finally, they pulled up the map that they were looking at. Nice. Now we can actually see.
it's land.
There's a lot of economic development happens there. It's like I think it's still quite fertile soil, and most of the economic activity that's quite important there is in like agriculture stuff. I think is Area C. So, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Huh.
So there was a question you asked
Yeah,
me.
I'm aware that Golan Heights aren't part of the West Bank. I know. I was just curious if, yeah. And technically, they stole that from Syria, I think, during the Six-Day War. So that wouldn't even be on the table to get back to Palestinians, I imagine.
No, that's a whole.
Although I think
story.
Syria probably still wants that back, but.
Oh right, yeah, that's right. I guess I should have mentioned. Israel did give most of the territory back after the 6 Days War. They didn't give all of it back. I think Israel still holds some territory that used to belong to Lebanon, and they hold some that used to belong to Syria, and then also like a little bit that used to belong to Jordan. It's not much, but it's enough to make it a major point of friction in Middle East politics. Oh no, where was I?
Would
Hold
you
on.
then say that
Where's the point where they pull up the map? Here it is. Okay.
most of the economic activity that's quite important there is in like agriculture stuff? I think is Area C. So, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Huh.
So there was a question.
Yeah, they stole that from Syria, I think, during the 6 Day. Syria probably still wants that back, but.
Okay, there we go. Back to where I
Syria's
was.
a bit busy right now.
Very
Yeah,
true.
so I
Syria
think
is pretty
You asked
busy.
me a question a little while ago about if we were talking about South Africa, and if let's say the whole question was whether you would choose apartheid or the white South Africans all getting murdered.
Genocide.
Yeah. I don't really think that binary really exists. So even if we say like tomorrow, all the white Boer farmers in South Africa just get murdered, let's say that happens.
Which is bad, by the way. I don't
would you then
support
say
this.
that ending apartheid was a bad decision, the wrong decision?
Yeah, I don't know.
This should be an easy no. Ending apartheid was good. Doesn't matter what, what kind of like unforeseeable consequences came afterwards. Because it is the case that white people in South Africa still hold a disproportionate amount of wealth relative to black people. The genocide would be bad, but then the ending of apartheid, a couple decades earlier, would be still good because you're giving people rights that they deserve by virtue of, being people. It'd be like asking in the United States, because I know South Africa is a very visceral example where politics sort of have taken a turn for this in a certain respect. There are certain politicians that have called for the killing of all the Boers. In the United States, like, if black communities and civil rights movements or whatever decided to kill whitey, would that make giving black people civil rights bad? No, it would not actually. Even though I would consider myself like a utilitarian or whatever, nothing justifies removing people's rights entirely.
I think this would be the more direct equivalence. This is what people would be saying, okay? If there was a whole bunch of, I'm going to just use black and white, we'll make it as inflammatory as possible. There's a whole bunch of black people in South Africa all saying, we're going to kill all the white people. We're going to kill all the white people. Give us voting rights so we can kill all the white people. And then you end apartheid, you reintegrate everybody, and then they kill all the white people. And then somebody looks at you and you're like, do you think that was a good idea? And you're like, well, yeah, we had to end apartheid. I don't know. I'm not sure what the answer is. Walk me through it. What do you think?
A lot of South Africans did say that. Black South Africans were saying, that Kill the Boer is an anti-apartheid song. It's from way back in the day. I guess it would depend on the leadership, because the only way South Africa ever was going to end apartheid, it wasn't because of just boycotts and sanctions. Between that and ending apartheid, there were negotiations, like bilateral negotiations with Mandela and the ANC and the white South African government. So the leadership of the black South Africans had to convince the white people that they did have a future in South Africa, that there wouldn't be massive repercussions, and the white people were only going to keep those negotiations going if they had assurances that that wouldn't happen, right? So that there would be property protections. That was one thing that Mandela did. That's why the Boer farmers are not all getting their fucking farms taken away from them. Other basic constitutional protections, because they're technically a statistical minority. So that would depend. Obviously, if the Palestinian leadership was saying, we want one state so we can throw the Israelis in.
Poor Palestinian people having 10 times less GDP per capita. I remember that Israel gets their income from diamonds. Knowing the numbers and stuff, it feels as if the USA would invade the Netherlands. Is exaggerated, but still. Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. Yeah, Israel has such economic leverage behind them where Palestine doesn't. I don't even know the respective populations of the two countries. In fact, I should probably look that up. Hold on. Israel population. About 9 million. And then Palestine is a little bit less than 5 million. But yeah, so Israel obviously holds a very disproportionate amount of geopolitical power and economic power relative to Palestine. Because Israel has they have farming, they have, like you said, the gemstones and stuff like that. They have, I'm pretty sure they have salt mining too. They have my man doesn't know his basic population. Yeah, what can I say? I'm American. They have arms manufacturing. That's one thing that Israel is in the business of. I imagine that makes them some money as well. They have I'm pretty sure they have like technological firms too. They have a lot of industry that you would associate with like a developed country. Palestine doesn't have any of that, in part because, like I mentioned earlier, Israel is taking natural resources from Palestine to use for their industry. Like water. And water's pretty essential if you want to do anything.
Into the sea, that would you probably have to get against that, but I would imagine if they're going to have a leader that needs some level of American backing or international backing, then they're not going to be saying that. Yeah.
Because isn't this essentially the arguments that Jews give? And it's not even like that ridiculous. Like, people in Iran, I think, right, do want to see Israel fall. They have an international fuck body, right? The IRGC that is.
The fact that you're talking about this much politics, you're giving off more and more of American vibes. Is that so?
Murder Jewish people, I believe, by sending in international support to people like Hezbollah or Hamas, especially in the Gaza Strip. And for a lot of these people, I think they literally are like death to all Jews. We want to kill all Jews, death to all Jews. So I feel like that's when I look at like the conflict in this region, the issue is like it's not even really the Palestinians, aren't even what we're really talking.
No. This is okay. The reason I got set off at this is because obviously I should acknowledge there is anti-Semitism in Palestine by virtue of, well, their neighbor state being majority Jewish and having done horrible things to them. Obviously, a lot of people are going to draw that connection, as erroneous as it might be. It is not the case, at least from interviews that I've seen, from data that I've seen, it is not the case that Palestinians hate every Jewish person or like hate Jewish people as a group. They hate Israel. And a lot of them, their first concern is not, we're going to kill Jewish people. Their situation is so desperate. Their first concern is, do I have a roof over my head and am I going to be able to feed my family, right? The talking points about Iran and Hamas and the international espionage or whatever, like, oh, actually the Palestinian rights movement has been infiltrated by Hamas and it's really a ploy by Iran to try to destabilize Israel. This is bullshit. And this is some shit that, like, I've been actually gaslit with this by people that I knew personally who I knew didn't have the greatest takes, but, like, I trusted them and sat there and listened to them, right? I will not name names because I don't think that would be terribly, I don't think that would be appropriate. But I was talking with them, and they talked my ear off. They basically gave me a lecture of about like 1,000 years of historiography to justify genocide in the moment. And what did they say about contemporary politics? They said that the Palestinian advocacy for their rights was really being led by Hamas, and that's why Israel needs to oppress them, because they're actually being led by Hamas and being supported by Iran, which is anti-American, and so that's why they should be subjugated. And I actually consider that to be the moment where that was like such a big breach of trust that I now no longer want to talk to this person. Like, they might still hold a positive opinion of me, but I don't hold a positive opinion of them anymore. And as far as I'm concerned, we're not on speaking terms. That's the tier of argumentation that Destiny is engaging with right now, that he's doing. And then, like, I'll let LonerBox respond, I guess, but Destiny's not arguing in good faith here, I don't think.
About it feels like it's all of the other parties around them that have a high vest.
Yeah, no, okay, yeah, like the what he's engaging in here, to condense it into a couple phrases, he's infantilizing the Palestinian people and depriving them of agency where they do and really should have agency. He's saying that, like, he's trying to delegitimize their movement by attributing it to other factors other than genuine, like, desire for representation and rights.
Interest in seeing Israel destroyed, right? You've got Saddam Hussein lobbing Scud missiles over during the first Gulf War.
Well, I didn't think you would bring up Saddam Hussein.
Like
that's
enemies
next level.
Surrounding them. Yeah, what do you think? Yeah, talk me through it.
So, Iran has been saying that since 1979. Hamas have been saying that since 87. Neither of these groups were especially popular amongst Palestinians until kind of mid to late 90s.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
What kept those groups at bay, especially Hamas, was the fact that Israel was engaging in negotiations. They had Rabin, who was started the Oslo Accords. There was some kind of like mutual recognition given between the Palestinian leaders and Israel. There was some kind of like path for peace on the table, and the international community seemed to be in support of it, like Clinton and all that. So I think whilst that was there, I think Hamas barely got like 15% of the vote, probably less. It was only after those negotiations failed, and then Hezbollah managed to kick out Israelis by not negotiating at all, then that Hamas just suddenly became the logical
So
alternative.
the gambit here, we're basically gambling on the idea that, I don't want to use the word appeasement because that's so loaded, but
We're not gambling on anything, first and foremost. It's important to mention that. This is basic sociology that Destiny is kind of, I would say, failing to understand, but I think he's more misrepresenting this here. The expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank has led to the majority of Palestinians to believe that Israel is not committed to reaching an agreement, but rather to a pursuit of establishing permanent control over this territory in order to provide that security. History, politics, American inventions, lack of geographical knowledge, and culture. Yeah, exactly. This is why that exact thing that you laid out is why I say that Destiny is misrepresenting what should be a very straightforward sociological phenomenon. The Israeli expansion has convinced Palestinians that, okay, Israel obviously isn't interested in diplomacy here. They're not interested in reading agreement, and that leads them to lose a lot of hope for the prospect of them having a country to live in that won't brutally oppress them like Israel is. So they turn to less savory actors that don't like Israel and maybe won't do the same things to them, actors like Iran and Hamas. He's reading it the other way around, where, oh, them going to Hamas and Israel and Iran is why Israel is doing this, or why Israel should be allowed to roll over them. In reality, Israel rolling over them and like foregoing any chance of negotiations is why Palestinians turn to Hamas and Iran in the first place. And as LonerBox mentions, they weren't even particularly fond of those groups until the occupation intensified and the like more settlements were established, more people were kicked out.
But we're basically saying, like, okay, all these people are saying death to Israel, but the only reason they're doing it is because, look...
And absolutely, I do think it belies a certain, like, I don't know, a degree of, like, arrogance. I don't want to do the whole, like, oh, you're American, you can't have an opinion on this, because I obviously don't believe that. But, like, I don't know, if Destiny has any degree of empathy, like, I'm a firm believer that, like, him having such a callous opinion does have to do with the fact that he doesn't live in proximity to this, right? And that he hasn't been on the ground. Granted, I haven't either, but what I am saying is that him being on the ground in Palestine, in Israel, if he were to live there for X amount of time, he would change his opinion very quickly. But that's if he has the amount of empathy that I think could be attributed to him and why he cares about politics. I don't know. It's possible that he's just engaging in such bad faith that his opinion wouldn't be changed by seeing the suffering of hundreds of thousands, even millions of people.
Look at Area C. Look at how aggressive Israel is in expanding into Palestinian territory, depriving Palestinians of human rights, of essentially running an apartheid state. If Israel would just...
Hang on, he doesn't know the reasons of why the countries are fighting. This, the thing his whole 1 hour stream is talking about. Somebody doesn't know the actual story about this. Pretty funny. The reason why what countries are fighting, the like... Oh, Destiny, you mean? Or are you talking about me? Oh, yeah, no, Destiny. Yeah, I think...
Just chill.
Him? Yeah, okay. I don't know if he knows entirely why they are fighting or not, like those two countries. I'm not inside his head, and I think that, like, I think what I was alluding to with him not being on the ground and not understanding the situation fully is that like it's hard for people to understand suffering. It's hard for people to fully conceptualize it when it's not overtly presented to them. And I think Destiny just has some really ill-formed opinions on the matter. He might know why, like, the sort of broader inciting, like, events that led to Israel and Palestine being in conflict and whatever the geopolitical situation of the Middle East. But I think he misunderstands it. He he knows, but he doesn't understand, right? That's kind of what I was getting at when I was saying, like, he was misunderstanding basic sociology. That, like, it's the desperation that drove Palestinians to, like, cozy up a little bit with Hamas and Iran. Because he has similar takes on issues in the United States that I would attribute to the same misunderstanding of sociology. And I think he knows a good bit about politics in America.
Palestinians, then the drive or the goal of all these Arabs in the area that basically want to kill Palestine, they wouldn't have anywhere near the popularity that they enjoy right now with Palestinians, is essentially the gamble that we would be asking for, which it would be a gamble, but you're saying it'd be a reasonable one. Like, yeah, they'd probably chill a lot.
The problem is that everything's a gamble, right? Like annexation is a gamble as well. So, but there's one gamble is in favor of human rights, like directly.
Well, it depends on whose human rights we're talking about, really, right? And when you
No, absolutely not. Hold on. So what LonerBox said is correct here, but like I said earlier, why I don't think it's appropriate to refer to this as a gamble because, you know, basic sociology, whatever. The issue here is, do you support everybody's human rights that it is possible to support and try to find an actual solution to this issue? Or do you forego the human rights of 5 million people and just allow Israel to, like, walk all over them? Which is not, like, look, allowing Israel to get what they want is not looking out for the human rights of the people of Israel. Genocide is not human rights. It is a violation of human rights, not necessarily to the benefit of anybody. Reclined, welcome to chat. Hello. There's an old like American, I forget if it's a like propaganda or PSA. I think it was immediate post World War II, where they show this Hungarian American fellow and this other American fellow having a conversation, right? And, you know, they were talking about the sort of rhetoric that existed in Nazi Germany prior to the war, because they saw a guy like talking about the truth about black people and foreigners, or whatever. He didn't use the word black people. And see, he sits down his friend because his friend is kind of taken in by this rhetoric until he gets mentioned as one of the groups that the guy doesn't like. The Hungarian American guy outlines, you know, I was a professor. And at the end of his whole spiel, he says, remember, when somebody's saying things like this, when somebody's advocating for like the wiping out an entire group, somebody's going to get something out of it, and it isn't going to be you. The Israeli citizens do not necessarily benefit from any of this. Like, the people in power, maybe, but I don't think we need to care about them, because their human rights are not under any sort of threat, regardless of what happens.
You say that one side is a gamble. I'm sure that for Israel, they'd say, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and take the gamble where we have the most agency. And our ability to defend ourselves and fight other nations is we're going to gamble on ourselves, our military prowess and our intelligence and our allies, like the United States, rather than gambling that if we give these Arabs everything they want, that they're not going to try to destroy
these Arabs. Like, unintentional sussiness aside, I think what Destiny's referring to here is just like nations act in their self-interest. No shit. What's the problem here is that Israel's self-interest contradicts the well-being of 5 million people, right? And like the thing that is the most in Israel's best interest as a geopolitical entity is like massively destructive, and the thing that is in Palestine's interest can be done without really hurting anybody, at least without hurting 5 million people.
destroy us again, basically, is what it sounds like.
Okay. I just don't think there's ever.
I'm not like 100% bonded to this. I'm just giving like the other side. Like what would have happened for the 6-Day War if Israel would have lost? Like, what would that look like? I feel
If Israel lost the 6-day... Okay, here's what happened in the 6-day war. I think this is an issue where Destiny doesn't even know, let alone understand. If Israel lost the 6-day war, you know what would happen? The borders would have stayed the same. Israel was already allies with the United States at that point. In fact, the reason the 6-day war went how it did, where Israel conquered a bunch of land and then gave it all back, is because the United States threatened to withdraw support and military aid from them if they didn't give it back. That's how the 6-day war would have gone if Israel lost. The U.S. would have said, like... the U.S. would have been like, well, obviously we can't let you, Iraq, Egypt, whatever, we can't let you annex Israel or whatever because they're our ally. And they wouldn't have been able to really do anything because remember, this is the 1950s and 60s. The U.S. has nukes. And we have nukes today. Power of allied friendship. Very true. All that to say, I don't think Destiny, like I said, Destiny doesn't even know, let alone understand here.
What do you think?
Probably, yeah. I don't know that much about 6-day. I mean, 6-day. There's so many fucking alternate narratives on this that I try to avoid that shit. But yeah. There's one possible scenario where that happens. Yeah, where they lose even the 48 war.
It's probably a troll account. As long as he doesn't start spamming like ethnic slurs or whatever, I'll let him stay, and I just won't engage too much.
And then they just all die. Yeah. I guess the problem is that like Israel does at least have a position where they do have a very strong military and they have nuclear weapons, and they do have a position where they're never going to give up, let alone everything Palestinians want. I don't think that's ever going to happen. There's going to have to be concessions on both sides, but they're also never going to give up.
You never know. What was he cooking? I will never know. You're right. I will never know what you are cooking.
A situation that's going to result in them all getting like clapped. So whether that's if they give voting rights and they make it like a very federalized system where there's just like one state, but you've got both groups kind of like doing their own thing when it comes to voting for what kind of societies they want to build and that kind of thing.
True. We all love a good caps lock every now and again.
I don't think it's much of a gamble to say right now, which is why I kind of like to focus on just more immediate stuff, is that like right now it's just like ending the settlements. That's like the first, nothing can happen before that. Like there's no negotiations if settlements keep expanding. If that stops, that like opens a door and then you can see what happens.
Sure.
I think I agree.
Yeah,
I don't think I have anything to add.
Lots of doors, some of which are really good for everybody, some of which are good for Palestinians, some of which are good for Israelis, potentially, right? Like, yeah, like that's like if they end the settlement.
This is, I think, Destiny like trying to both sides of it a little bit, which I don't think I agree with very much. Yeah, I'll let him keep going, but I don't know if I'm gonna agree.
It feels like when conservatives in the United States are like, do we want to ban bump stocks or do red flag laws? Like, we would be okay with that, but we're scared that if we give that, we don't know what's next. And I feel like that's probably the concern for Israel, that like, well, if we stop the settlements, we start pulling back, like, what's next?
Okay, they're like the slippery slope. This is a slippery slope fallacy. Destiny is engaging in here, and the reason that we say it's a fallacy is because it's not real. Said it right when he left. Oh well. Oh, okay. I will miss him. In fact, I miss him already. First of all, the like, oh, if we ban bump stocks, then what? Never materialized because we banned bump stocks and then that's it. Maybe red flag laws. I would support red flag laws for sure, which just means like if you have a tendency towards self-harm or harming others, or if you're like domestically abusive, you aren't allowed to have a gun or whatever because you might use it to shoot somebody you know. You might use it as a lever of power in a personal relationship or whatever. You know, somebody could potentially get a court order to get your gun taken away. I support that because there's data to support the effectiveness of that policy. But in with respect to the U.S. and Israel, that's even less real. You will never be forgotten. Always remember 7th Streety when I'll use caps lock. Dude, that's so true. I could actually. It'd be funny if I added a command that was just that guy's username and then it just says in like something in all caps lock or whatever. That'd be great. But yeah, like the slippery slope with Israel in this analogy that Destiny's making, which I don't think is the most apt analogy, but you know, you work with what you got. is even less real, because in Israel's case, they have the United States behind them. That like the United States is very, very like dead set on looking out for its geopolitical interests, as are most countries. But the United States has more power than most countries. So whatever concessions Israel makes, they will have the safety net of the United States basically guaranteeing that they remain independent, so that we can have a sort of friendly post in the Middle East that isn't Turkey. You know? So there's no... I don't think there's really any slippery slope the way that Destiny is portraying there is.
For negotiations, I guess.
Yeah, but is that like so? What's if they just focus on that one move, like just stopping expanding settlements, which, as far as the international community, that's like the consensus. They should stop that. If they do that, what's like the...
And yeah, he's invoking this stuff over things that are so mild. Like, hey, stop doing the genocide, please. Stop, like, bulldozing over existing Palestinian villages and towns. And then he's saying, oh, but if we stop doing genocide against Palestinians, then what'll happen? I don't know why I said we, but, like, if Israel agrees to stop genociding them, who knows? Maybe next it'll be, now we get to genocide you, which is delusional.
Worst thing that happens, like, right after that in response, you think?
Well, I mean, if you're not winning, you're losing. I mean, my guess would be is if they stop spending on settlements, if they start to lose any, or if
The
they
fuck is that
slowly,
argument?
Pull back from the expansive point and now they're stationary, then the next thing that people are going to fight for is...
The fact that USA has such big allies and armies, that makes that a mind control on its own? Absolutely it does. And that it's like... It's such a boon with the United States, like...
I don't...
The military and the, like, the intelligence that we have and the sort of... the soft power that we're able to exert. Like, people want to be allies with the US because it means that they get to do trading in the US dollar. They get more of the US dollar, which is like the global currency and stuff. Yeah. Let me... Actually, I need to go back a couple of seconds here. Intelligence, I get it. I was referring to the CIA, but that's a good one.
that people are going to fight for is going to be to pull back from some settlements, right?
I don't think anyone's realistically expecting the bigger ones to go away.
Sure.
But again, it's like anything that happens seems to it's going to have to be as part of like a negotiated process. So I feel like if they can offer it's usually like one-to-one land swaps in exchange for pulling back from settlements, which has been accepted in the past. So I don't think it's going to be the case that they're going to expect like 500,000 settlers to leave the West Bank. Especially, I don't think Israel's ever conceding to settlers leaving, because after what happened in Gaza, they're never doing that again.
I agree.
What happened in Gaza? That it became militarized and people
They got rid of the IDF took 8,000 settlers out, and it was pretty like rough. I think some of those settlers to this day, quite a lot of them still don't have alternate housing, and it was like 15, 20 years ago. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's just.
Yeah, there definitely does. Like, this is even more specific than most political debates get with like Israel-Palestine, because how much of a mess it is. I think it does need to be like a step-by-step, okay, we make sure that we're doing land swaps so our people have somewhere to go, and then we pull out some settlers. And I think part of that process also does need to be the construction of additional housing, because obviously when you bring more people into Israel, and there's like Israeli settlers and whatever, they might be doing horrendous things. They might even be horrendous people, but they're still people, and they still need a place to live. And I wouldn't wish homelessness on anyone. So, yeah, probably something like the one-to-one land swaps. And then between that and pulling out a bunch of settlers, you build additional housing near certain urban centers or whatever for those settlers, and be like, okay, we will we'll have you relocated here if that's okay. And then, from there, maybe, you give them some stipends to enable them to move around if they want to move around more. Something like that. And then, like, wash, rinse, repeat until you have a system of borders and villages and settlements that looks good and that both sides are maybe not happy with, because this is politics, but at least, like, okay enough with to be like, all right, look, fine. And then that's, like, an uneasy two-state solution for now.
They're not going to remove that many at once again.
Okay. Damn. Well,
I think maybe
pretty. Israel Palestine is pretty rough, huh?
yeah. I think maybe the analogy you're going for sounds more like Rwanda. Do you know much about how that whole genocide like took place?
I know about Rwanda. The United States was involved in some conflict prior to that, I think in Northern Africa, and we did really poorly. And I think that people blamed that intervention later on us not intervening at all in Rwanda. That's the only thing I know about Rwanda. I barely know anything about it. Tell me.
Really? What the fuck was... Oh, probably Libya at some point? I don't fucking know. Somalia? Something like that. I don't know what Destiny's referring to here, but I do know a little bit more about how the Rwandan genocide played out, because I read about it actually in an anthropology class. It was a very gruesome affair, and it was almost entirely down to the effects of, I believe it was Belgian colonialism in the region, where they like separated the Hutus and Tutsis into ethnic castes as opposed to just tribes, right? And they gave basically the lighter skinned and smaller nosed, like basically the black people that looked a little bit more white were the upper class, like the second class citizens below the Belgians. And then the Hutus, the darker skinned black people with like the bigger noses that look less white, were third class citizens. And that stoked a massive amount of ethnic hatred in Rwanda.
So it's an example of a historically oppressive group basically becoming the victims. The Tutsis were a minority, but they were also the wealthy, like landowning oppressors. They were the monarchy when the Belgians and the Germans were colonizing Rwanda. The Tutsis had positions in the colonial government.
Yeah, I guess when I said second class, I should have said more like 1.5 class, because they were basically on the level of the colonists in terms of the wealth that they controlled proportional to the Hutu. But yeah.
There was a narrative, a very false narrative put out that Tutsis were actually like more northern Africans, so they were like racially superior and shit. So yeah, they had like every advantage possible. And the thing with when the occupation of Rwanda ended in the late 50s and early 60s, the result was that Hutus made up 80+% of the population, and as soon as they had democratic power, they used it to attack Tutsis, like straight away. Not even in the 90s. There was already Tutsis like fleeing or facing repercussions and all that shit.
Yes, colonial.
And then obviously in the 90s, the Hutus did the genocide, right?
Yeah, average colonial.
But I think again, if someone
timeline,
asks you, does that mean that ending colonial rule or bringing like equal rights in Rwanda? If someone ever said like, was that a bad decision? I would probably still lean with no. Like, what the problem was is that the colonial government that left didn't give a fuck about what happened to Tutsis afterwards. There weren't any protections put into place. There was no constitution that protected people from being kicked out of their houses and all that stuff. So I feel like when it comes to Israel and Palestine, because there are so many massive international actors involved in it, I think it would, even if I think Palestinians get like voting rights and they use those rights to clap Israelis, like I think the point is going to be that it won't be the fact that it won't be equality that did that. It'll be like the way it was actioned. Same with Rwanda or South Africa.
Yeah. And I can understand the abstracted moral argument.
I think I agree. But, I don't know if I have anything to add there.
That the on the ground feelings are going to be a lot different, right? That like, for instance, if I were to go to a casino and I were to bet my whole life savings on black and I win.
Dude, I don't know what it is with like him acting, Destiny acting like this is such a gamble. It's not. Well, like we've seen this play out in both the better and worse forms of it. It's a like it's a pretty clearly informed policy choice. But I guess I'll let him continue.
You can tell me all day about how.
And although I will actually, before I let him continue, I will say that like arguing in any circumstance that people shouldn't have certain rights is pretty suspect, if you ask me, because the fact that people have rights is not a problem, right? And it is never the source of a problem. It's how like you manage protections from from violence being enacted on other people and stuff like that. The fact that I have a right to speak, the fact that the right to speak exists, is not responsible for hate speech. If that makes sense. If you get rid of the right to free speech, hate speech doesn't go away, because hate speech happens because of other things, even though it is enabled by the fact that people can speak freely. One of the most deaths coming from Leopold, 6th place of all dictators, 6 million deaths. Yeah, Leopold was, it was just him, too. It was, like, just the one guy. Oh, you want to ask your online name, Bolshevik. Yeah, what did you want to ask? Why? Yeah, sure. I'm not actually a Bolshevik. In case you were curious, I am not a Bolshevik. I don't agree with them. But in high school, I actually dressed as a Bolshevik soldier for Halloween. I remember. This is why my Twitch channel is named what it is. I made it back in high school. I dressed as a Bolshevik soldier. I had a trench coat and like dark green shirt and pants and some boots and some gloves. Very simple outfit. And I had a ushanka. And my sister helped. She did my makeup. She made it look like I had a bunch of soot and dirt and stuff on my face. And I went to school like that. And I looked like I had been in the trenches for most of the day. And I thought it was pretty cool Halloween costume. And at the time I was just being edgy, like haha, I'm a communist. This was before I really started reading more stuff and like fleshed out my political positions more. So a lot of it comes from like edginess. Won any contest? Unfortunately, no. I don't know if I would have, but unfortunately there was no contest for like best Halloween costume, because I'm pretty confident I would have won, or at least been up there. Yeah. That's the origin of the Bolshevik in my name. Yeah, and then I dressed like that again in my first year of college. I wore that as my Halloween costume also. But I did not do makeup that time because obviously I went to college somewhere else. My sister wasn't there. Yeah. I don't think there's a whole lot else to it. I still kind of like the edginess. That's probably why I keep the tag around the Bolshevik before Y2K.
How it was a bad bet, but emotionally it's probably not going to feel that way, right?
Oops.
Yeah, and
if I were like if I were to name myself more in line with my political beliefs, I would probably just put myself as like, I would probably just describe myself as like a socialist or a like anarchist or something like that. There's some pretty simple political labels that I would describe myself as. Bolshevik just sounds a little bit punchier and edgier.
I think, I don't know. Yeah, on the ground it's really hard to say, because you can even take what happens on the ground with Israel and Palestine.
China will grow larger. What are you talking about? It's just a meme. There's a meme of like a guy saying China will grow larger or something like that. And I was thinking, I don't know what to do for the 120 follower count. I don't think I'm gonna do anything in particular. Usually I like to reserve that for bigger like benchmarks. So I'll just write for now some dumb meme about like China will grow larger. And then that's like my follower base.
And even make really optimistic claims, because despite everything that's happened, is like there are still lots of intertwined communities, especially along the north of Israel and along the northwestern coast, where
I have considered though that me having that and then like me also having Bolshevik in my tag may give some people the wrong impression that I'm more of like a tanky than I am, which is to say I'm not a tanky. You know, I've gotten into some disagreements with people on that stuff in the past, but you know. I don't know if I want to change it yet, though.
There are Arabs and Jews who live side by side with like in relatively peaceful conditions, and this like kind of happens in Jerusalem as well. In some parts. So yeah, I don't know. I just think the
Jerusalem
person
famously known for lack of conflict between
yeah, well,
Jews and Arabs.
Very
What's
true.
going on in Al-Aqsa?
Many
Yeah.
such
yeah,
cases.
it's more like that's maybe a less good example, but
Sure. But yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah, and I would still say that that's why I don't think I could ever take the position that like we need to keep this group down because on the off chance that they might fuck us back in the future. That's
Yeah, this is a great point from LonerBox. What he's saying here comes from a CNC Dozer quote, I guess, and 2.6 million view holding video of Rise of Kingdoms using that phrase. That's probably it. Then let me see if I can find that. CNC. Here, hold on. Yeah.
China will grow larger.
Yeah, it's that. It's exactly that thing that you said. It's great. I love it. Anyways, but yeah, the point that LonerBox is making or made here, I don't know how long he's gonna talk about it, that like we need to keep this group oppressed because we don't know if they will rise up and oppress us in the future, is actually, you know, Israel says it here, but this is the same rhetoric that's used by every colonial power in history, you know, with the European colonial powers colonizing Africa and America, and America said this about the slaves as an argument against emancipation of the slaves. And I know that Destiny wouldn't argue that ending slavery was bad. Or if he did, it would be a really bad hill to die on.
it's like the kind of position I find is that like the most untenable.
Yeah, I guess I figure it just seems that like because of the unique kind of Jewish history, it seems like if there's any group of people that could make that argument, it would be Jewish people, right? They have like 15 different holidays where it's like some group of people try to genocide us and we lived and let's eat food. Like it feels like because of Jewish history, I could see them in particular being like, well, you know, we're gonna go ahead and trust our gut on this one.
I mean, it is valid to bring up the history of Jews being like super oppressed, but I think the critical thing that again he's missing here is that Jewish people does not mean Israel. Jewish people means Jewish people. There are people living in Israel that are not Jewish. There are Jewish people in Israel that are discriminated against, like Palestinians, Palestinian Jews, Arab Jews, Ethiopian Jews. There are Jewish people living in other countries that are maybe in various states of oppression and whatnot, but certainly I think in the United States, despite the fact that like there are, you know, Jews are the social group that are subject to the most hate crimes proportionally out of any population because of how small they are, I think you could make a much better case that we should simply focus on inclusion of the inclusion of Jewish communities in the nations that they currently reside, rather than creating a Jewish ethno-state for all the Jewish people in the world. There are 16 million Jews. Really, that few? That's not a lot. Most in Israel, secondly, mostly in the USA. That makes sense. Let me actually look how many Jews live in the United States. I think it's like 5 million or something. 4 or 5 million. How many Jewish people are in the US? Alright, place your bets. Did I guess right? No, actually, 7.6 million Jewish people in the United States, accounting for 2.4% of the total US population. 4.9 million adults who identify as religiously Jewish. 1.2 million adults who identify as Jewish but with no religion. So that'd be like ethnically Jewish, I guess. And then 1.6 million Jewish children. Huh. I just said 7 flat, to be sure. Yeah, so then you were closer than I was. I was thinking like, okay, so 4 or 5 million. But no, yeah. But yeah, I think it'd be a much better bet to ensure that like Jewish people have rights in secular countries, because remember that while there might be a demographic majority of certain religious groups in the U.S. or in France or whatever, they are secular countries they don't have a state religion. Israel, although they might not state it, they have a state preference for a certain religion. The state acts on behalf of what it views to be the true religion of Judaism, and frequently against the interests of communities that live in Israel that are Muslim.
Not that that necessarily morally justifies it, or even empirically justifies it, but...
Do you know the bloodline?
Wait, so then he just kind of conceded the point there. He, like, Destiny brought that up, and then he's like, not that this morally or empirically justifies it. So I don't really know why he said that then.
Bible baby joke from Middle Eastern Jews.
Nope, tell me.
The Middle Eastern Jewish joke about there's this like village, I think it's Syria or some shit, and they're
I
like, oh
love
no,
jokes.
oh fuck, like a baby's just been murdered, like they're gonna blame us because the baby was murdered for like some ritual, and they're gonna blame us. We're fucked. Oh no, and then a few hours later they come back. And
I have
it's
a feeling
shit,
they know
good
that's
news,
gonna
the
go.
baby was actually Jewish, so there's not gonna be
Oh.
blood libel repercussions. Yeah, they have a very grim sense of humor.
Jesus Christ, that is a really dark joke. It's well written, but holy shit. Oh no, oh fuck, a baby was murdered. They're gonna blame the Jews and then expel us. Oh, thank God, the baby was Jewish. We're not gonna get the blood libel shit this time. Oh my God, dude.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking, like, if someone comes to you and says, like, "Oh, what do you think should happen?" and all that, I feel like a much more reasonable response would just be, like, even if there's no obvious solution, I feel like you could just say something like, "Yeah, the settlement expansion should probably stop. Israel should probably try to go back to being a bit more of a democracy with a court system,"
Very true.
rather than saying what you said in that panel.
Which is Israel
was-
just continues expansions until Palestinians
Yeah.
are basically just gone. How many Palestinians are there? Is it a few million?
Within
It's like
Israel,
5 million?
Gaza and West Bank, it's like 6-7 million, and
Oh,
then
okay.
another 7 million in the diaspora. So
What's the population?
Jeez, it's a
Diaspora
lot.
means around the world or just around the Middle East?
around the around the world, but I think most of them are in the Middle East, like vast majority.
Gotcha. Are how many Jewish people are there? Israeli Jewish citizens? Is it a few
6-7 million.
7. Oof.
I think
So,
there
yeah.
are slightly more Palestinians from the river to the sea right now than Israelis. They overtook them like a couple of years ago because they have a lot of babies over there.
It sucks that the numbers don't work out in Israel. Like, I feel like if there were 500,000 Palestinians, I think you could just say one state solution would be the best and then figure it out from there. But
Nah, it's like probably 50 to 48 right now. Palestinians.
yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually, I'm enjoying some popcorn right now. Nice. I love popcorn. I might get some after the stream. I was actually wondering why Destiny was bringing up numbers, but I kind of wanted to see where it went. I'm glad I didn't like try to impugn him for it right away or whatever, because I think it is valid to bring that up. Chilling after some busy weeks, you know? Yeah. Chilling is nice. It is certainly, you know, the case that like the situation is definitely like complicated by the fact that like Palestinians and Jewish people, as far as like population goes, in and around Israel, at like the Israel-Palestine area, is like pretty even, 52-48, like slightly more Palestinians. Whereas I think Destiny does bring up, I think rightly, that if there were like, if the number of Palestinians was very small compared to like Israelis, then this would be a much easier fix to just say, okay, one state solution and Palestinians have just as many rights as Israeli people. But you know, then it kind of ends up being like the old colonial dynamic, where there's obviously way more colonialized, like colonized people than there are of the like colonial power, and that's from a policy perspective, it certainly makes things a lot more complicated. Although morally speaking, I don't think it complicates the issue very much. I think the moral objective is still the same, that, you know, you want Palestinians to have rights because they're also people.
Yeah, the numbers make it a lot rougher. I know. Okay. Well, anything else you want to add to this? Or... So Jewish people should probably chill on the West Bank settlements. Ideally,
Not Jewish people, Israelis. Although it is like a prerequisite that like you be Jewish to be Israeli and enjoy full citizenship, but it's a distinction, it's an important distinction to make, that it's Israelis doing this, not Jewish people. Jewish people all around the world aren't like going evicting Palestinians from their homes. It's just Israelis.
pull back the more controversial ones. I don't know where those are.
They're
and
also
then negotiate.
scattered,
Yeah, and then try to negotiate some. I feel like carving out a real Palestinian country would be good. I don't know. Are there any countries on the map right now that look like what Palestine would look like?
What, empty bits of land that they could
Just like little scattered bits of like chickenpox land on a map. Is there any country right now that looks like that?
Oh, no, I mean, this is what, that's what they tried to give in South Africa. It was called Bantustan. And obviously the black South Africans were like, fucking kill yourself. Yeah.
Oh, dude, that's actually so funny that they were like, here, we'll end apartheid. We have a proposed solution. We'll cut out a bit of land for the people that compose 90% of the population. You guys can have that, and the other 10% will live in most of the land that we now know as, that we call South Africa. I don't think that would go over super well. I mean, it depends on how well it's executed, obviously. If you, like, say, okay, we'll concede some land here, and then we'll ask these other Arab nations if they would be willing to do this so your country would be contiguous, whatever. Yeah, I don't know if that would be the go-to thing.
So I don't think so. I guess unless you count island networks. So probably not.
There's unironically so much pressure for American Jews to go to Israel and preferably find a Jewish slash Israeli wife and settle down there. It's cringe. Yeah, I've heard that. That's always one of the funny things.
Really? Is that true?
The difference I hear between,
that's kind of wild.
I think I've talked about this before. My Jewish friends and my Nazi friends. Is like every time I debate with Nazis, they talk about how much of an exclusive.
What? Me vibing with 39k channel points? Nice. Meanwhile, Destiny, you have Nazi friends? That's South Africa? Yeah.
Club Judaism is, and that it's very, 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 very hard to convert and blah, blah, blah. And then in the United States, bro, when I talk to Jewish people or like quasi-Jewish people or half-Jewish people, the way that they talk about how aggressively Israel tries to like get people into like birthright shit, where like if you're like 1/4 of a quarter or if you've got friends, they'll like let you go on these things to try to do like PR for Israel and get people to move down, that it feels like Israel's like really aggressively recruiting like anybody that's willing to convert and go down.
Yeah, what Destiny's talking about, I think I can see what the motivation behind that is. I think this is like South Africa has 3 capital cities. I think I knew there was a country that was like that before. I didn't know it was South Africa just off the top of my head. South Africa capital cities. Yeah, wow. 3 capital cities. Cape Town, Pretoria, and Bloemfontein. Interesting.
Down and live there, just because obviously having the numbers in the population and the foreign ties, probably makes it look better or more legitimate, right?
Yeah. Meanwhile, a Palestinian who.
I think what Destiny's talking about here, like this, is also like a concerted effort by Israel to try to like continue pushing out Palestinians in some form or another, or to like expand territorially and stuff. I don't think if Israel was like not really concerned with pushing out Palestinians and whatnot, they wouldn't be like so heavily recruiting people to try to come to Israel. Because like I mentioned, that some of a lot of the Israeli settlers that are pushing out Palestinians are not from Israel by birth or whatever, but they're from other countries and they're Jewish or whatever, so they get to come to Israel.
Who lives in a refugee
So,
camp in Lebanon, who can still see their
still
old towns,
Israel's
is
fault.
basically, like,
Skill issue.
Not allowed to go back to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking mental.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that would be things as well, because I guess one of the reasons Israel survives so well in Western politics is because they're considered the only democracy in the Middle East. But again, like that expansionist wing of Israel.
Yeah, that only democracy in the Middle East claim seems to be changing. Not exactly at a quick pace, but certainly not at a slow pace. It's becoming less and less true over time. I think at this point you could probably pretty safely say the only democracy in the Middle East is Rojava, and that's not even a state. That's just a like anarchist cutout in Syria, like an insurgent cutout in Syria, where things are more or less run democratically. Yeah. But I've talked about Israel sliding into dictatorship before. It's not good.
Is gambling with that reputation as well, because they're also very anti-democratic. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. You mentioned it.
With the Supreme Court thing.
What is the Supreme Court thing you're referring to specifically?
Israeli Supreme Court is like their only checks and balance system, and they basically just got rid of it.
Don't they have like the Knesset or whatever? Don't they have like a parliamentary?
Yeah, but it's like so that's the parliament.
Okay, so the in Israel, the parliament with a simple majority can overrule the Supreme Court, which means the Supreme Court doesn't exist anymore. Because its function is to like say, hey, you actually can't do this. But if they're saying that, that means that the Knesset passed a law, so they would just vote on it again, and then the Supreme Court's word means basically nothing. And right now, Netanyahu's party controls the Knesset, so no more checks and balances,
But
really.
there's no check and balance outside of that, other than they don't have 3 branches. They just have the Knesset and the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's basically just been completely defanged. Yeah.
Sure. Having one branch would be bad. To be fair, I think don't most countries have like 2 kind of branches of government? I think the United States is relatively unique with all 3, aren't we?
No, every country has 3. Every country doesn't have a presidency, but every country does have 3 branches of government, right? There's this is a little bit of political education. There's the executive, there's the judiciary, and there's the legislative, right? The legislative writes and passes the laws, or it votes on the laws and whatever. The executive branch, this is actually what conservatives sometimes refer to as the deep state. This is headed sometimes by a president, sometimes by a prime minister, but usually an elected head of government in like a developed democracy, whatever. And this is where you have departments and ministries and whatever that deal more with like administrative stuff that isn't voted on, but rather it's done by like appointees and stuff. So like in France, the Ministry of the Interior, even though actually no, France has a presidential system. What am I thinking of? Let's say Britain. Britain has a Ministry of Interior or something like that. That's part of the executive branch, even though they don't have a presidential system. But they don't have a presidency. They have a parliamentary cabinet. It's really, there's this like weird bridge that exists between the legislative and executive branches in non-presidential systems that doesn't really exist in presidential systems.
I think it's more to do with depending on how constitutions work, you can probably get by with that, but
Sure.
It's like
I
2.
didn't say they got rid of the Supreme Court.
It's like 3 branches, 2 of which are conjoined at like the shoulder or something.
Okay, fucking being colloquial in fucking chat. Sorry.
Yeah. People are saying the UK has a parliamentary supremacy. Yeah, but like your presidents and everything, your prime ministers come from within your parliament and shit, and I don't think they have anywhere near as much power as our president of the United States.
They definitely
You guys are
don't.
saying bicameral. I'm not talking. First of all, when you say a bicameral system is common, I'm not even sure if that's true because in the UK that system is barely bicameral. And also, like having a head of state, a president that's elected by the.
Yeah, I don't know what Destiny's chat is talking about. There's bicameral, there's unicameral. Theoretically, you could have tricameral, although I think that would result in a basically non-functioning government.
People and wield so much power.
Breaking
It is
news.
relatively unique to the United
Twitch
States.
chat sometimes
I
does
don't
not
think
know
that,
what it's talking
I
about
don't
when
think
it's
that-
full
I don't know
of
how many countries do
random
legislative
people.
presidents that
Many
stand
such
so,
cases.
much in contrast to their parliamentary system. But I also don't know. I could be wrong on that. Maybe other countries don't. I know more about the UK system than others, though.
Yeah, a lot of it just depends on constitutional arrangements and shit like that. But yeah, as far as everyone who's not the Israeli right absolutely despises what they've done down there. So I'm gonna assume it's pretty bad. But
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the reason I try not to go too strongly on any very particular solution is just because as soon as one step gets made in whatever direction, everything else might change as well, right? Or opinions.
Yeah, that's the
can
thing that
change.
sucks about.
Yeah.
That's why I hate when people do historical counterfactuals. People are like, oh, if Germany would have just done this, or if Russia would have just done this, or if the US would have just done this. It's like, if they just do that, then you can literally analyze that one decision and half a step past, but then every other variable changes, and then who knows what world we're in next.
That's
it's really
true.
funny when people try to plan out 15 steps ahead of a major, historically altering decision that somebody makes,
I think the best way that I heard to look at it was we spoke more recently about who gets what land and how do you morally decide who deserves what piece of land. And you kind of find out very quickly that's kind of impossible, right? Like Israelis will say we get it because of the Israeli kingdom, and then Palestinians will say, well, there's a statute of limitations on refugee rights or being displaced or being indigenous. So where does that line end? Does it end for Palestinian refugees in 48? But a much easier way to look at it, rather than land or states or anything like that, is just like for me, like the issue with Palestinians and Israelis is fundamentally like human rights.
Facts? Oh, dude, he's back. Random Smash Simulator. Disrupting white guy with black looks who didn't have anything better to do than talk about politics.
There's like the right.
I agree 100%. That's literally me.
The right to not be ethnically cleansed. There's the right, like refugee rights to either reparations or restitution. So, yeah.
Here's something I'm kind of curious about. How do you? So here's something I have a really hard time with. I have a really hard time. Stop. That is not true. The House of Lords in the United Kingdom is nothing like the Senate in the United States.
No,
yeah. Okay.
Dude, the House of Lords is so fucking wacky. There's a video by what is it? Map Men. They're a British YouTube channel, and they do mostly stuff about maps. But they did one about the UK House of Lords, and it's so bizarre.
United States has a true bicameral legislative body in that both halves have big elections. Both halves wield arguably equal power. They have the power to veto each other, at least when it comes to legislation. The Senate might have a bit more power, but the House of
Double
Lords
reference.
is
back. He always comes back. Double reference right there. True. I understand one of the references. I don't think I understand the other one.
Here's the thing that I have a lot of problems with. How do you... I have a really hard time talking about morals or morality when it comes to other countries and other governments. I feel like things get absurdly complicated very quickly. So, like, for instance, in the United,
Really?
Even a basic one of, should you be allowed to do the Nazi salute in Germany, right? Like, they say no. As a U.S. citizen, I have a big allegiance to freedom of speech. That's an obvious yes to me. How do you reconcile those moral differences? That's a basic one, but like more complicated.
Let's hear him out. I know he's being edgy.
I would say in the U.S.
He's being edgy mostly to be edgy, I think, but I could see maybe an argument here. Let's see what he has to say.
It would be immoral to abolish our Supreme Court, or immoral to roll our presidency into the legislative body, the executive and the legislative. But I can't
Really?
how do I make those same moral claims of other governances or countries, especially people of different religions or governing styles? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think for some.
Okay, I think okay. He didn't say a whole lot in the way of like a direct argument. He laid out. I do understand that like there's some difficulty that people have. It's like obviously just different systems are very different when you get down to their sort of the context in which they exist and stuff like that. Obviously in Germany, Nazism and the Nazi salute are much more touchy subjects than the United States. But I think ultimately, you know, you should be comfortable with advocating for the same broad things everywhere. Like broad ethical prescriptions of like philosophical platitudes and whatever, and then kind of take it from there. So, like, well, does this seem like it would, lead to something necessarily good or bad? In Germany, because of the problems that they've had with Nazism in the past and the episode they're going through with the AfD right now, I think I am comfortable with the Nazi salute still being banned in Germany as long as that is the social norm. Because of the very, very messy history that like Germany has had with Nazism and things like that. If it wasn't like, if it's not banned in the United States, I don't think I would advocate for it to be banned, because as hateful and distasteful as it is still a form of expression. And I think that the social pressures in the United States against being a Nazi and doing that in the first place are enough to deter people. And then as far as like, I think he mentioned the abolition of the Supreme Court. I would advocate that in the United States because of the context in which our Supreme Court exists. Because it's so like, I don't know. I'm getting a little bit more granular than I want to, but I don't think Destiny needs to reserve judgment based on the fact that like different countries are different. This is a big pitfall of what is it called? Cultural relativism and moral relativism. I don't think he's a moral relativist, but I think he is engaging a little bit in cultural relativism here, which a lot of anthropologists like, but I don't. I don't know if that's the norm in anthropology these days, but ultimately something being good or bad or having a good or bad effect is the same in each like country, and it's just down to well, actually, I might not even say that, but like, you shouldn't let a different culture dictate your ethics. That's what I'll say. It's pretty sad that children these days just think about world wars when talking about Germany. Yeah, I think that's unfortunate, because Germany actually has a lot of cool things to talk about. There's a lot of cool stuff to talk about when you're talking about Germany. For example, this is not something that kids would think of, but it's something that, you learn with time. One of the things that I really like Germany for, politically speaking, is that they have a system. This is left over from like the social democratic days back in the 20th century, when like the CDU was pushed considerably left. There's a BBC 69 Germany. Yes, I do not know what that means, but yes. There's like a law that mandates a certain percentage of worker representation on corporate boards, and I think that's a good thing. Because like, you see, being a socialist, I argue that the bourgeois are evil and hate the workers. That's not actually what I believe. I believe that they just have self-interests that are contrary to the interests of the workers. But I do think, I think it's actually a really good introductory step to start introducing the workers' interests to running the company. That way you get just a little bit closer to the objective of like worker ownership of the means of production and stuff. Bolshevik. Oh, did I say some shit does that mean something? I mean, I know what the acronym BBC stands for, but I don't know if that has any particular meaning about, like, I don't know. If it just means big black cock, then I agree. But if it means something worse, then I don't agree. Sorry. But yeah, you're right about, like, it sucks that people think Germany and then immediately think world wars. They could think single-payer healthcare system. The Bismarck model. Because that's cool, too.
I feel like there is some kind of, like, universal morale. Or you can just try to take what a country's doing, like Germany, and just look at what it means in their own terms. So with Germany, it's what's called militant democracy, basically. It's like, in democracy, you have to curtail what other people might consider some freedoms to let
I love militant democracy.
Keep fascism out. You can very quickly right now just look at the AfD vote in Germany and just be like, well, it failed. Look what's happening to you guys. Yeah, like your far right party has like more than 30% of the votes in quite a few parts of Germany right now. So
well, but like, is that really what you want to go on? Because like, for instance, like Hitler's party had popular approval, and they were able to, my understanding is, democratically establish the Enabling Act, which essentially became anti-democratic in the measures it was attempting to achieve. But does that make it?
I don't know so much about the history of Weimar Germany, but my understanding is that the Nazis actually, prior to like taking power undemocratically, they actually never had a majority support in the legislature. I think the election that happened immediately before the Nazis just banned all the other parties, they got like 30-something% of the vote. It was not a lot. And then the Conservative Party got like more than them, and then like some of the members defected to the Nazis or whatever. I think the way that the Nazis took power was, I think Hitler was appointed chancellor by Hindenburg, whatever his name was. And there were also some like surrounding factors, like the courts being hostile to democracy in Germany at the time and other stuff like that.
Good or bad? That was a conversation we had right before you joined stream, that like you could democratically throw away your democratic principles. Is that anti?
Oh yeah, okay. I think I know. I'm gonna let Destiny finish this, but I want to chime in about that.
Itself.
You're probably not gonna like this answer, but enabling.
So Destiny is asking the classic question about, democracy, where it's like, should it be, the question of like democratically electing an anti-democracy party? I don't think that should be allowed. I think, you know, since the Republican Party in America is anti-democratic, since the AfD in Germany is anti-democratic, same thing with the BBB in the Netherlands and the RN in France and stuff like that. I think those parties need to be banned from participating in the political system, because if they came to power, one of their objectives would be to remove democracy. And, you know, a democratic system still needs to defend itself from anti-democratic forces, such as fascism. And I think that's the biggest threat that it needs to defend itself from. Yeah, so I think it's okay to ban those parties from politics and stuff like that, to forbid certain actors from rising that would say, I will end democracy, and they gain support that way.
Enabling Act wasn't like Germany was already not a democracy by the time the Enabling Act came. I think the first thing that they did.
Oh my god, I forgot. What'd you forget? Did you just remember?
That massively fucked the democratic system in Weimar Republic was two things. One is in 1932 when they abolished the Prussian Parliament.
You know what's going on here in the Netherlands? Because no, I don't. Is there some stuff going on in the Netherlands right now? Some crazy shit. Does it have to do with the BBB? Oh, I bet it has to do with the BBB. The government is dissolved? Yeah, I think I saw that. Hold on. Netherlands government collapse. Here's an article from August from the news outlet NPR. 30 people are leaving, including the minister-president. Oh yeah, that's right. Mark Rutte's government collapsed. This is the mainstream conservative party, right? So then, what happens now? There's going to be new elections to see which party takes power, and then they're going to have to reassemble another cabinet. I think I'm gonna go until about 40 minutes on this. Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's pretty significant.
Like the Papen coup, which basically meant the federal system was done, and that was like over. I think it was almost 50% of the population that made up. So yeah, that was like the big thing there. And also before that, they had a. Do you know what Article 48 was?
That was only counter Article 47, right?
Yeah.
Article 48 allowed the president to declare a state of emergency in Germany in times of national danger and to rule as a dictator for short periods of.
Seems to actually make changes for the good of our parties. Why? Oh, 7th Street. I think it's because like. Well, actually, I'll let 1v3 answer that. Why did the why specifically did the Dutch government collapse? I know, like, my answer was gonna have to do more with like the far right party, but that might not be it.
Of time. Oh, so this is literally the I feel like I've seen this quote like in 50 different movies. Where
Hey, don't be mean.
Did you know that in times of great peril outside the gates of Rome, they would declare one man to fight or to rule the city and blah blah blah? Right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So yeah, like that's the.
Fun fact: that's actually where the term dictator comes from. The term dictator comes from the Roman system, where in times of military emergency, one military commander would be appointed leader of Rome until such time that the war was over, which was similar to a system in Greece, which was called tyranny. Same thing, in times of war or whatever, somebody would be appointed leader until stuff was over, and that person was called the tyrant. That's where we get the term tyrant, dictator, tyranny, and dictatorship from.
Motherfucker that like everyone that historians tend to agree was like the self-destruct button of Germany was Article 48, and that was
Too much bad decisions.
misused in the 1920s by social democrats. So yeah.
Sure, but then how do you?
Let me actually look into that a little bit. Let's see. Why did the Netherlands government collapse? Oh yeah, okay. Oh yeah, that's right. No, what did I do? I was like 40 minutes in, I think. There was like a massive immigration policy debate, and then they'd like all the parties like hated each other's guts, and then the government collapsed.
To declare, because of another bill that was passed a long time ago, a national state of emergency.
Marquis made too many boo-boos. Average Dutch conservative. Yeah.
In order to forgive, I think, student loan debt or down or some shit. Oh, okay.
Here, hold on. Where was?
Sure, but then how do you? Also, wait, real quick. Are you an American? I keep forgetting this. I feel like you're in
Scottish.
Scotland or some shit.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wait, quick. Are you an American?
So was Article 48, and that was
But, like-
misused in the 1920s by social democrats. So yeah.
Sure, but then how do you? Also, wait, real quick. Are you an American? I keep forgetting this. I feel like you're in
Scottish.
Scotland or some shit.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Wait, so you're not American.
Yes,
You're not in America or
no.
anything, right? Okay, you have a guitar though and everything, right?
Yeah. American instrument.
Okay.
Yeah.
Weird. And you're in Scotland.
Crazy.
No. But, so like for instance, in the United States, sorry, half what I say is sarcastic. So like in the United States, for instance, our president has wide deference to declare national states of emergency to get things done. So Pisco was arguing the other day, for instance, that the president ought to be able to declare, because of another bill that was passed a long time ago, a national state of emergency in order to forgive, I think, student loan debt. Or Donald Trump declared a national state of emergency to ban 7 Muslim-majority countries from immigrating to the United States. And Donald Trump declared a state of emergency to send the military down to assist with like building his immigration wall. So like, arguably these are democratic measures because they're part of your constitution or they're democratically upheld, but then they can be used in like anti-democratic ways. So what is like, sorry, yeah.
I see what Destiny is saying here. That like
I think there are.
the ability of a president to declare a national emergency or whatever doesn't necessarily make a country like all that much more susceptible to fascism on its own. Like in the United States, the way this is used, right? It has been used for some really authoritarian shit in the like immediate post 9/11 era, but the way it's supposed to be used, and I think the way it's been used most frequently, is to declare a national emergency whenever there's like a natural disaster or something, because there is actually like a pool of money that can only be accessed if you declare a national emergency. So the reason you do that is then you have extra money on hand to address that. Love being called boy again makes me feel young again. Very true. Reminds me of that It miniseries where Tim Curry is the clown and he's like, "Kiss me, fat boy," and stuff like that. Really cheesy. But yeah, like, for example, if a hurricane were to happen and there's like, oh no, there's a lot of damage, Joe, hold the damn phone, we're past the 2-hour mark. Yeah, I'm about to end stream. I think I've reached a good point. I'm just gonna finish this up about talking about like national emergency as a concept, and then I'll be done probably. Call the New York Times for real right now. Yeah, I know. Stop the presses. Like, if a hurricane were to hit and there's like a lot of damage, President Biden could say, okay, this is a national emergency, we need to rebuild. And then all of a sudden there's more money that he can use now, or that like federal agencies can use now that they couldn't before. And then that could help to rebuild faster. But it's in the United States, I think things are a little bit different because democracy is the norm here as like a set of institutions, a liberal democratic or liberal like framework is the norm in the United States, where at the time it really wasn't in Germany. Germany had only recently adopted a democratic model, and a lot of the institutions in Germany that were attempting to be used for democratic purposes were still very anti-democratic. So I think that the anti-democratic elements in Germany were much more present and willing to use the national emergency clauses of the Constitution against the structures of democracy in Germany than like the presidency in America would be willing to. Although obviously, this stuff is subject to change in the future, and obviously the danger is there, but it's like there's national emergency, which is one thing that could potentially be abused. But then there's all this other stuff that existed in Germany at the time that doesn't exist now in the United States. That doesn't exist as much. So it's less dangerous in the United States because there's not all this other stuff influencing it. But with that said, I have gone past the 2-hour mark, and I'm more than halfway through the debate, and I think I'm comfortable leaving the rest of this until next time. It seems like they've taken a pretty significant break from talking about Israel and Palestine here. This is a pretty civil discussion thus far. I think LonerBox is very very level-headed and stuff. I've seen Destiny like have some moments where he kind of explodes in debates and stuff. I threw my pen on accident and it hit the cat. Oh no, he'd be running. I think he's outside right now. It's okay. Tell him you love him and he will love you back. So yeah, I'll leave the rest of that until next stream. And right now I will look for somebody to raid. Let's go back here. Who do we got? Who's live? Moki is live, Cody Schwab is live, Lumiru is live. Decisions. Yeah, the classic. Yeah, be sure to join next time on Tuesday if you can. I'll be watching the rest of this debate. I just got to remember I was at like the 41 minute mark. So, raid, Cody Schwab. Very cool. All right, thanks for coming. I was glad to see some new faces in chat. You know, Seven Streety and whoever else there was. And I'll see you guys on Tuesday. How's it going?